I want you to listen to this very carefully. This is a woman speaking directly to a camera. She is telling you exactly what happened to her. She is naming the people involved. She is describing the specific morning, the specific car ride, the specific instructions she was given. And she understood, before she said any of it, exactly what it would cost her to say it out loud.
Up in the morning and said, "You're going to meet a prince today."
Galen tells me in the car that I have to do what I do for Jeffrey for Prince Andrew.
I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. If something happens to me, for the sake of my family, do not let this go away.
She posted that publicly. She named her therapist. She named her GP. She built a paper trail in real time because she knew exactly how vulnerable she was. 24 hours after Virginia sat in front of that camera and said all of that, she was gone. And the manuscript she had been writing for months, the one with the names, the timelines, the locations, the specific transactions, disappeared alongside her. Before we talk about what happened to Virginia, we need to be precise about what she was actually describing. Because her testimony was not vague. It was not a general account given from a distance. It was specific in a way that made very powerful, very protected people extremely uncomfortable. Virginia was not describing feelings or summarizing experiences from memory in broad terms. She was describing specific mornings. Specific instructions handed to her like a daily agenda, who she would see, where she would go, what would be expected of her when she arrived.
Young, Galen woke me up in the morning and said, "You're going to meet a prince today." I didn't know at that point that I was going to be to that prince.
She was 17 years old. And she was being scheduled the way you schedule a meeting. The way you block off time in a calendar. Ghislaine Maxwell, who presented herself publicly as a socialite, an ocean conservationist, a well-connected woman of culture, was, according to Virginia's documented testimony, functioning as a logistics coordinator, a handler. Someone who managed the movement of young girls the way a property manager handles appointments. And Virginia did not hedge when it came to the name of the person she was sent to meet. She did not say a member of the royal family. She named him directly and on camera.
Prince Andrew came to her house in London, and we went out to Club Tramp. Prince Andrew got me alcohol. It was in the VIP section. I'm pretty sure it was vodka. Prince Andrew was like, "Let's dance together."
The venue. The section. What she was drinking. Who initiated contact. These are not the details of someone constructing a story. These are the details of someone who lived something and has been carrying the specifics of it for years. And the moment she described leaving that club, the car ride back, is the moment where the full machinery of what Epstein was running becomes impossible to misread.
And Galen said, "He's coming back to the house. And I want you to do for him what you do for Epstein."
That is the system described in a single sentence. Not implied. Not inferred. Stated directly by the person managing the operation. This was the transaction. This was the structure. The question people most often ask when they first hear testimony like Virginia's is the same one. Why didn't she leave? Why didn't she go directly to law enforcement? The answer reveals something deeply important about how these operations actually function. Because it was not primarily physical force that kept Virginia inside the network. It was something more calculated than that. Something engineered to make escape feel impossible without ever putting a hand on anyone. Jeffrey Epstein told her directly that the Palm Beach Police Department was under his control. He told her he knew where her younger brother went to school.
Jeffrey Epstein tells me he owns the Palm Beach Police Department. And I can't remember when he tells me this again, but he told me, "I know where your little brother goes to school." So I mean, like, when you talk about psychological fear, it's not like they put a gun to my head and said, "Do this or die." It was these invisible chains that I talk about that kept you complacent, kept you there.
Her brother's school. That is not a vague threat. That is a man telling a teenage girl exactly where her family is exposed. Delivered calmly. Deliberately. As a reminder of who controls the situation. These were not isolated moments of intimidation. According to Virginia, this was a recurring mechanism, used against multiple people inside the network. This is how you construct a prison with no visible walls. You make people believe there is nowhere to go, that the institutions which should protect them are already compromised, that speaking out would cost everything and produce nothing. While Virginia was being held inside by psychological control, the world outside was being maintained in a state of carefully managed ignorance. And the number of people required to maintain that ignorance is one of the most disturbing details in her testimony.
A lot of people involved. It took doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, dentists. All these people knew what was going on, hairstylists. I mean, the list goes on. I could keep going on and on and on. Drivers, chauffeurs, butlers, housemaids. It took all of these people turning a blind eye.
Let that settle for a moment. Doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, household staff, drivers, people who collected regular paychecks, looked directly at what was happening around them, and chose silence. This was not a secret operation maintained by 2 or 3 people operating in the shadows. This was an open-air enterprise sustained by dozens of professionals who understood what they were part of. Virginia was not hidden from these people. She was right in front of them, visible, and not a single one of them said anything. 4 years. The silence was not incidental to the operation. The silence was the operation. Eventually Virginia reached the point where staying silent felt more dangerous than speaking. When she made that decision, she did not simply give one interview and stop. She decided to write everything down. The book went through 2 working titles during its development. First, The Billionaire's Playboy Club. Then it became Nobody's Girl. From those 2 titles alone, you can understand what kind of document this was. This was not a memoir in the reflective, therapeutic sense. This was a structured record. Names, dates, locations, specific people, specific events, specific transactions. According to her co-author, the material was detailed enough that it would have functioned as a working roadmap for investigators and journalists trying to trace the exact shape of what Epstein's network had done. Part of it was published. But the sections that went the furthest, the pages that detailed accounts she had not yet named publicly on camera, the chapters that covered the most damaging ground, those disappeared at the same time Virginia did. Within 24 hours of Virginia's final interview, she was dead, and the most critical portions of her manuscript were gone from the hands of the people who held them.
Virginia Giuffre, the most prominent victim of the late convicted Jeffrey Epstein, took her own life on Thursday. This is just weeks after she made headlines for saying that she had days to live after she claimed to have been hit by a bus.
Hit by a bus weeks before she died. And before any of that happened, she had already gone on the public record saying she was not suicidal. She had told her therapist. She had told her GP. She had posted it publicly because she understood exactly what her vulnerability looked like, and exactly what it would appear to be if something happened to her.
I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me, for the sake of my family, do not let this go away. Too many evil people want to see me quieted.
She wrote that. She posted it. She named her therapist and her GP by category to create a verifiable paper trail. Because she understood the threat was real and she was building documentation against it in real time. And then she was gone. And the manuscript was gone. And we are left trying to piece together what Virginia knew from whatever fragments managed to survive. Virginia is not the only one. The pattern that surrounds her testimony, speaking out, specific documentation, evidence that disappears, the person gone, that pattern has repeated itself around the edges of this story more than once. And it consistently centers on the same circles, the same industries, the same names. Marina Lira, another documented Epstein survivor, has stated publicly that the government is currently holding documents that could fill critical gaps in what survivors need, not just to build legal cases, but to understand and process what was done to them. A survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking network is telling us that the government possesses records of what was done to her, and that she, the person it was done to, cannot access them. Another survivor described the conditions on Epstein's island in terms that strip away every layer of the polished public image he projected.
I have spent the last 17 years in my own prison for what she, Jeffrey, and all the co-conspirators did to me. I was raped repeatedly. I was raped 3 times a day sometimes. And I was not the only girl on that island. There was a constant stream of girls being over and over and over again. And yes, Ghislaine must be in prison because I've been in hell and back for the last 17 years.
And 27 for me.
I was 10 years old when Liz Stein was being raped. I was 10. That is how long this trafficking ring has been.
She was prepared to swim away from that island rather than spend one more night on it. That is the reality underneath every photograph, every party, every celebrated friendship that surrounded what Jeffrey Epstein presented to the public. We are no longer in the era of speculation about what the Epstein files contain. The release of documents, the flight logs, the internal email records, the raw investigative materials, that process is underway. And what is coming out is confirming what people like Virginia spent years trying to get the world to believe. The emails show a man who was embedded across entertainment, fashion, academia, and political circles simultaneously, who used coded language in professional communications, who, in his own words in writing, described his island as an aquarium full of girls, and most strikingly, who was discussing his own crimes in writing, casually, with colleagues, 7 months before his arrest, as if he had no concern that anything would ever reach him. That is not the behavior of someone who believed he was in danger. That is the behavior of someone completely confident that the system around him would continue to protect him. And for a very long time, it did. But the files are coming out. The names are emerging. And the people who knew their names were inside those documents did not wait to find out what would happen when they became public. They moved. Literally. Departures from the United States by high-profile figures whose names appear in the broader web of Epstein documents began almost the moment the document release schedule was announced publicly. Not after any election. Not in response to any political development. The plans were already in motion before any of that was known. Virginia Giuffre sat in front of a camera and told us exactly what happened to her. She described the specific morning Ghislaine Maxwell woke her up and gave her the day's instructions. She described the car ride. She described the VIP section, the vodka, the dance floor. She described coming back to the house and what happened there. She described all of it because she believed the truth, spoken clearly enough, publicly enough, with enough specific detail, would finally matter.
Start by saying, it's not how Jeffrey died, but it's how he lived. And we need to get to the bottom of everybody who was involved with that.
Not how he died. How he lived. She understood better than almost anyone outside of that network that Epstein's death was not the end of the story. The story was the decades of operation. The people who enabled it. The people who participated in it. The people who covered it up. And she was building the case, interview by interview, chapter by chapter, until she wasn't.
They've been accused by a multitude of women of a multitude of wrongdoings, and nothing has happened to any of them.
Not yet. Those 2 words carry everything. Virginia made sure, even if it cost her everything, that the world had heard her voice before it could be taken away. The least we can do is make sure what she said does not get buried again. The question that nobody in any position of authority seems in any hurry to answer is simple. Who made sure she wouldn't be able to tell us anything more? If you believe Virginia deserved better, that all of them deserved better, share this. Because this story is not finished. Not even close.